Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning if you are joining on LinkedIn. Good morning if you are joining on YouTube. So, the topic for today is ADHD and burnout. And my guest, unfortunately, is unable to join us because her daughter is unwell. So, unfortunately, you've only got me. Right? Unless I potentially will be bringing somebody else on this morning if they can get the link and get the tech to work. But you've just got me. So, well, you haven't just got me, right? We've got each other. So we're potentially going to have a conversation this morning. I still want to talk about the same topic because I know that there are some people potentially in the comments this morning actually that are struggling with this particular topic, and it is around neurodivergence and burnout. So that's what we're going to be talking about. If you want me to broaden it out a little bit more widely in terms of burnout, more generally, I can do that. But the scheduled topic with Stephanie Camilleri of an ADHD organisation. I'm going to have to sort of veer slightly to the left and kind of, sort of be flexible and pivot. Good morning, Adrian. How are you doing? Good to have you joining us. I've got a very foggy start to the day. I went out my morning walk and it was very foggy. But yes, so please do say good morning if you are joining live on either LinkedIn or YouTube. And we're going to get into this. And the reason that we wanted to have this topic, actually, this link between burnout and neurodivergence, is because certainly for the individuals that I know that are neurodivergent, and also some of the network leaders that I work with as well, particularly running neurodiversity networks. There seemed to be like this constant talk around burnout and the link between neurodivergence. So when I was doing some digging for this conversation with Stephanie this morning, some of the stats that we were talking about as part of our prep, did you know that people with ADHD, for example, are somewhere between 4 and 6 times more likely to experience burnout than those that don't have ADHD? So something to be aware of. If you are in the chat, I'd also like to know, actually, have you ever connected the link between neurodivergence and ADHD? If you have in the chat, just a yes or maybe a no, or is it something that you've maybe suspected? Good morning, Sylvia Anna. How are you doing? Lovely to have you joining us this morning as well. So, were you aware that there is this link between neurodivergence and ADHD? Love to get your perspectives on it. Good morning, Jill. How are you doing? So that's what I'm going to be talking about. So just in terms of sizing up the problem here, around 4% of the workforce has ADHD. So if you are in an organization of 1,000 people, that's potentially 40 or more employees with ADHD. And that is before you account for anybody that doesn't know. We know that, for example, late diagnosis is quite early. Oh, frozen screen and no audio. No, I think the audio and everything's okay for where we are, but please drop it in the chat. If your screen has frozen and you have no audio, apologies, I can't sign. Please drop that in the chats. But yeah, undiagnosed ADHD, obviously we know it's an issue. Undiagnosed neurodivergence generally, and late diagnosis is an issue. So actually the 40 in every 1,000 employees is probably an underestimate of the number of people. So yeah, as I was saying, in terms of some of the facts and figures, adults with ADHD 4 to 6 times more likely to experience burnout than the average employee. And that really surprised me. I don't know whether it surprises you. And, when in terms of burnout tipping into long-term absence, and, sad to say, I am aware of somebody that is a supporter, of these live conversations who I know was off for some time due to long-term sick connected to burnout. So this is definitely an issue. Thank you for confirming about the screen. Yes, ADHD, neurodiversity, and burnout correlating has made a lot of sense to me. I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts on it, Adrian, in terms of that correlation. I don't know the science of the why. So even though I've got the stats about it being a little bit higher, I don't know the science of the why. Although one of the things that I spoke to Stephanie about in our prep call was potentially, at least for some individuals, the challenges of masking and having to mask a lot. You know, we know that the stress of covering parts of our identity, so having to over filter parts of our identity. And I heard somebody describe it. I think it might have been Adrian actually, but feeling as though we're constantly having to perform rather than be. That in itself is stressful, right? Because I know that from the covering research that was done by Kenji Yoshino, that you know, having to constantly kind of like hide elements of who we are, that in itself leads to a lot of internal stress. So I can imagine that sometimes is potentially part of the problem. Silva, just to I think this links to what you were saying. Yes, the connection is natural, inevitable, because neurodiverse people's nervous system are overactive, and burnout is a nervous system collapse, so to speak. That's a really interesting take. Junior, good morning. Good morning, Junior. I was diagnosed a few weeks ago. Pick a struggle, Junior. Pick a struggle, Junior. It's really good to have you. I'm intrigued, Junior. You know, if you know, share as much as you want to share, but I'm intrigued as to what made you even go and get the diagnosis. Right? Really intrigued. If you're happy to share that as well, Junior Beeman, our resident global ERG co-chair. Yeah, so I'm just really interested to get your understanding of it, just in terms of some more facts and figures, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to keep this quite factual. So I'm going to drop in some of the facts and figures that I have. So when it comes to burnout and long-term absence and the connection between ADHD, apparently somewhere between 1/4 of the people that receive long-term disability insurance for burnout also meet the criteria for ADHD. So this is definitely, like, if anybody wasn't sure that there is a connection between burnout and also then long-term absence connected to stress and burnout. And I do appreciate I just combine their stress and burnout, which is not the same thing. But there is definitely a connection between ADHD. And if it's left untreated, so in terms of what's the impact, so what's the business case for organizations? You know, I'm an accountant, so I'm often connecting it to what's the so what for organizations. So if you're in an organization that maybe isn't taking this seriously yet, what's the risk? So left untreated, adults with ADHD lose an average of 22 days of productivity per year, effectively doing a year's work in 11 months. That's a whole month, basically. They also take an average of 8.4 more sick days annually than colleagues without ADHD, and have a 38% higher risk of being recommended for sick leave altogether. So those are the stats, like in terms of actually just identifying and describing the actual challenge definitely is an issue. In terms of stats, oh my gosh, Sylvia, this is a good question, and I fear I don't have the answer, but I'll look through the show notes that Claude has very kindly pulled together for me. Do I have any stats on the intersection of burnout and women and perimenopause? Well, I think you're so right here, Sylvia, in terms of it's an important area to look at, because obviously we know that you know, I can certainly attest to perimenopause and how it affects the nervous system. In fact, I could do a whole other LinkedIn live on that. On, you know, it's almost like you literally feel like you're going mad, right? When it comes to perimenopause generally. And then obviously we know, so Sylvia, to your point around women and the intersection of ADHD. So for example, so before we even get to the burnout, we know about the masking, and we know that because of how women are socialized to behave, we know that masking tends to be more prevalent with women. So I guess if you combine that, Sylvia, I don't have the stats. I don't have the stats at all. Check Google Scholar. I probably should do. If anybody has the time, because I can't. That's going to. I can't multitask, and obviously the whole thing about women being able to multitask is not true, right? So my guess is that you might be right, Sylvia, that Sylvia Anna, there might be an increase potentially just in terms of that intersection. It probably shows up in different ways, I guess, in different people with different identities, different genders, different life stages as well, which I think is to your point, Sylvia. So thank you for that. Martin Griffin, Martin, hi, how are you doing? Hope you're okay. Yeah, if somebody could check Google Scholar for me, that would be incredible. Junior, people kept saying I was showing signs, and I was concerned about how much things irritated me, especially sounds, which makes sense now because I hate noisy offices. That's so interesting. That's so interesting, Junior. And I know for anybody that doesn't know Junior Beeman and hasn't met him in real life, Junior looks a lot younger than he actually is. And so I was talking about late diagnosis, and I think when we typically think of late diagnosis, you know, we're talking about diagnosis into adulthood, and also potentially, you know, beyond kind of like midlife, if I call it midlife. So Junior, you know, and I'm not asking you to disclose how old you are, but there definitely is this increase, right, in people that are discovering later in life that they have some sort of neurodivergence. And interesting, actually, the way that you described it, people around you noticing kind of like certain traits, right, that kind of then prompted you to go and look into it. I love that. But yeah, just as a takeaway, I would encourage anybody to meet up with Junior if you can, just to see if you can even guess his age. Absolutely impossible. Flawless skin. You're not that wrong making the connection between chronic stress and burnout. Yeah, absolutely. Burnout is a result of prolonged high levels of stress. Maybe that's something that we will get into, Sylvia, when I have you this side of the camera. Martin, I love this. ASD burnout, different from normal burnout. So ASD, autism spectrum disorder, burnout, different from normal burnout. Is that a question, or are you just making that as a statement? If you could clarify for me, that would be great. Mick, I'm glad now that I'm not frozen, right? You can actually see and hear moving pictures. Taking out leave, weekends, and normal sickness rates, the average person is at work 220 days per year. So 20 days of lost productivity is 10%, a big incentive for organizations to get across this challenge or opportunity. Absolutely. 22 days is a lot. Yeah, 20 days of lost productive time. Junior Beeman, welcome to the Misophania Club. I don't know what misophania is. Apologies. I'm obviously over it. 41. Junior, I'm 41, everyone. 42 in October. If you meet Junior Beeman, I kid you not, he looks as though he's in his 20s. And I'm not just saying that. I'm kidding it. Fact. ASD burnout is different from normal burnout. Thank you so much for that, Martin. So we've done the kind of sort of understanding the symptoms, etc. The masking problem, let's just talk about this, because I think we sort of touched on that, and I mentioned that, Sylvia, in my comments. So masking definitely seems to play a role in this. So in terms of, there was a survey done of managers, 93% of managers surveyed reported concerns when an employee disclosed an ADHD diagnosis. And it's really interesting that for some people, I feel as though certainly in social media spaces and, for example, on Instagram and online, sometimes it feels acceptable, but I don't think it's that straightforward in organizations for people to feel comfortable disclosing their diagnosis. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. If you run a team, or you run a network, or you know of a team, what are some of the challenges that you think there are around? Oh my gosh, Stephanie is here, right? So I am going to bring Stephanie into the conversation. Let me just go into the masking. Again, is a nervous system adaptation. To mask, to self-edit, to self-contain will activate the nervous system. So much to say. Stephanie, I didn't know you were going to actually be able to make it.
It's all happening. This is the thing. And it's actually really pertinent to this topic, why ADHD burn out in terms of kind of what tends to happen to us.
Yeah.
A bit of a story.
Well, welcome. I mean, the chat, the comments are going off. I don't know whether you may have time to kind of cycle back through some of the comments. But Stephanie, how are things going? So this is live, right? This is the beauty of live. There's no AI slop over in this corner for sure.
Raw reality, right? Raw reality, the truth.
It's raw and unfiltered. So I was literally going to fly solo, but Stephanie has joined us. But we've got some incredible people in the comments. So I'm going to do an introduction. I'm going to introduce Stephanie to who we've got in the comments, right? So we've got Adrian Arenta in the comments and Sylvia Anna, who actually lead an organization which coaches leaders. So it's called Lead and Belong. I'm probably going to get this wrong now. Lead and Belong. So they coach leaders in a very holistic way. So it's always incredible to have them. We've got Jill, who is an inclusion professional. We've got Mick. Mick, I don't know your background, but we've got Mick Gillick, MBE. We've also got Junior Beeman, who, pull up his comments. I was diagnosed a few weeks ago. So Junior, newly diagnosed. This comment here I thought was quite interesting, because I sort of asked, what made you even go and seek out the diagnosis? People kept saying I was showing signs, and I was concerned about how much things irritate me. We've got the incredible Martin Griffin, who I know probably until recently was running a neurodiversity network and was talking about the difference between ASD burnout and how that potentially manifests and is different from normal burnout. So maybe we can we'll maybe get into that once I've read your introduction. And that's it. Oh, and we've also got just coming in even later than you, Stephanie. We've got Sunaina Coley. Auntie's here. Sunaina, self-described professional auntie, original bad girl, as I describe her. Right. So let me introduce Stephanie to the audience. So Stephanie had a sick child this morning, hence why Stephanie's a little bit late for us. But my guest this morning is Stephanie Camilleri, founder of the ADHD Advocate and one of the UK's leading ADHD performance coaches. Spent 15 years as a Magic Circle lawyer before receiving a late ADHD diagnosis that fundamentally changed how she understood herself and what she wanted to do next. She now coaches senior leaders and execs and has worked with many organisations, including the likes of Allen Overy, IMG, Petrofac, to build skills and cultures needed to support and retain neurodivergent talent. She also hosts the UK's first ADHD coaching summit. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Just breathe. And Mick is a keen. Mick, I'm a keen DEI advocate. Thank you, Mick, for that. Emma Claire, good morning. Undiagnosed here, but pretty sure. I run a small team, and I shared my suspicions with my boss and discussed how she can support me. She has been great with everything I've discussed. We were just talking there, Stephanie, sometimes about the challenges of people disclosing, which is something we talked about, wasn't it? I think. Yeah. Why do you think some people are sometimes fearful of disclosing their diagnoses?
I think, the main issue, even with all the awareness there is now, there's still a massive stigma. There's still so many myths surrounding ADHD. So there's, I know with some of my people that I coach that are in the medical profession, for instance, doctors, a lot of them, when they get their diagnosis, they don't actually believe it. I've had to coach people. Sometimes it takes like a whole 3 months just to get someone to accept their ADHD.
Yeah.
They think it's too much of an excuse. They don't want to come across as coming up with excuses. ADHDers are the hardest on themselves than anyone. Their negative self-talk, their expectations of themselves are ridiculously high. It's brutal. We're the last ones to want to find an excuse for ourselves. We'll blame ourselves when it's not our fault.
Yeah. And Martin has added as well, like the stigma and shame. And I was saying that even though obviously, you know, and we're having this sort of conversation, and obviously in the world of Instagram, and maybe like TikTok, and maybe with a younger demographic, it's talked about a lot more. But in some of these stuffy workplaces, it isn't necessarily as trendy or cool, right?
It's been really hard actually, because so I started very much coaching employees. I coached quite a few employees in performance management. And, you know, some of the stories, you know, particularly when they actually disclose their ADHD to their employer. I had one horror story where one lawyer, you know, disclosed their ADHD to try to get some help. And actually, instead of getting an OC health report, the employer got their own psychiatrist in, re-diagnosed him. This new psychiatrist said it's not ADHD. Like I was horrified. It's definitely the worst story I've had. I mean, it takes discrimination to, it's just cruel. Poor guy.
Yeah. The word gaslighting sort of came to mind for me, you know.
Not fair.
Yeah. What about the one thing that Martin's raised, I guess, is because Martin was saying that his diagnosis is autism spectrum. So just, I guess, for people that maybe haven't even necessarily come across that as a term compared to ADHD, just, I guess, maybe talk to us about neurodivergence as an umbrella, and just the difference between some of these terms as we get into the convo.
Yeah, so again, and I think I probably don't do us any favors, obviously calling ourselves ADHD Advocate and Power ADHD, because ADHD, it seldom travels alone. Very rarely, you know, it usually comes with dyslexia, dyspraxia. I would say over half of my clients have got ADHD and autism, which they call, I think it's ASC now, autism spectrum condition. Still waiting for ADHD to become ADHC, you know. You know, but neurodiversity, it's you know, all of our brains, we're uniquely wired. It's a different brain wiring that we have. But you know, I learned about autism. I mean, without knowing it, I was coaching people with ADHD and autism. But I trained with ADCAR, and ADCAR are ADHD kind of training. They train coaches to become ADHD coaches. But obviously, so much of ADHD and autism and neurodiversity generally, like the traits overlap. And we can talk about how so, but with autism, definitely the rejection sensitive dysphoria. Everyone with ADHD, I find their RSD is pretty crippling.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I feel, even though you know, for those of us that work in like the field of inclusion, I feel that maybe it's because it is so complex. Actually, I feel that a lot of us maybe aren't to the level that we perhaps need to be, and that we are in terms of other protective characteristics. You know, that's kind of just a reflection, really. I don't know whether you'd
Yeah, it's this is the beauty of the coaching approach. You know, the beauty of the coaching approach is, you know, it's all based on partnering with that person, and you know, on the person being the expert in their own life. And so it doesn't really, if you've got ADHD, autism, dyslexia, given the actual coaching model, the way we coach, it doesn't, you know, really matter. Although sometimes with our clients that have got autism, not knowing, so if you ask them an open-ended question, so the thing is, particularly with people with autism, there's so much, you know, going on in their head. There's so many ways things can be interpreted that when you ask the question, quite often they get quite anxious because they don't know how to answer it. It doesn't, you know, come to mind straight away. And obviously that's not the environment we want to create in coaching. So at times when we ask for permission if we can maybe offer certain things like a menu. And that tends to go much better with people with ADHD, because they need to see the picture. They also need a bit of education beforehand. They need context. They need the picture in order to be able to understand what's going on for them. Like they need to have pieces to get it, and then they can move forward. So a bit of psychoeducation separately, and we always kind of signpost to, you know, we've got a lot of good webinars on YouTube and things like that. I find that the coaching is much more effective once they've got a clearer picture of themselves, you know, where they fit in that picture.
And that's what I was going to ask you, actually, given that, you know, we've got a couple of people in the comments who literally have just been diagnosed, or I can't remember what Emma Claire said. So either or undiagnosed, but there is a suspicion, or they suspect that they maybe have a diagnosis that's undiagnosed. What maybe does that journey look like for an individual? So just talking about the individual themselves, I guess, where does it start? Is it the conversation with the line manager? Do they reach out to somebody like you? Do you know what I mean? How do they kind of walk themselves through that? And what are some of the resources and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, usually people that come to us that have been newly diagnosed, quite a few have found it through social media, TikTok, the more it's been talked about online, and because particularly ADHDers can be avid scrollers. They consume a lot of information via the phone, via TikTok and YouTube. And so, in some ways, even though there's some content obviously that's not ADHD informed, and it can be a danger if people, are following what these, the suggestions. But in terms of some of the traits, the way ADHD people with autism experience the world, them talking about that has helped others. Again, like I said, if they can see the picture, see themselves in the picture, that's and sometimes with organizations, if we're going in and providing an ADHD awareness training and talking about how ADHD and autism manifest, how it presents in the workplace, what we find is, because we have a look at the chat and we're talking about it, and people will be like saying, oh, hang on, I do that, or oh, maybe that's me, or if they obviously don't feel like they want to share that publicly, via the chat, they'll reach out to us independently and say and ask, whether they can have a chat. But we don't diagnose, so we've got about 12, 13 referral partner psychiatrists that do. So, and you can go onto our Empower ADHD website, and our list of referral partner psychiatrists are there. And they've all been vetted by us. We only work with people, we listen out. I might see articles on LinkedIn and I go, okay, that's a psychiatrist or that's a therapist that really gets it. Then I reach out and, we partner to help.
Yeah. So finding the right support, because as you say, and I'm conscious, and we could get into there's a whole rabbit hole of the diagnosis and the support and the experts and the gurus on social media and all of that stuff, right? I wanted to pick up this comment here. Junior Beeman affectionately calls me Oprah, right? Which I'm going to take. So it says, tell you what, Oprah, I wish I could do Junior's accent, right? Junior's Sheffield accent. Tell you what, Oprah, my family were more awkward when I told them I had ADHD than they were when I came out. 15 Jamaicans don't believe in ADHD. Do you see this sometimes, Stephanie, like cultural, how different cultures react as well, like to diagnoses? Yeah,
definitely. Also families. The thing is, obviously, because ADHD, autism, it runs, it's a family affair. So the thing is quite often in families, if someone gets diagnosed, particularly one of the sons or daughters, and they tell the mother, well, the mother's like, but there's nothing wrong with you. I do the same thing. Your brothers and sisters do the same thing. And it's like, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But that's usually the case. There's also shame. So another thing is mothers, and actually this was in the case, I had this, a lot of my friends that have been diagnosed, same thing, is that, when you tell your mother, but they didn't have the information in the day, but start looking back at our past with the ADHD lens once we tell them we have it. And it obviously then makes sense to them. And then they beat themselves up because they didn't catch it earlier. They feel like they failed, which is really sad. And we always important to give them perspective and say, you didn't, like, the information wasn't there. You couldn't have possibly known. They couldn't have.
Sylvia Anna here has said undiagnosed ADHD with dyslexia. I'm proud of it, although it took me 40 years to get here. I've done a lot of masking to navigate school, working on my childhood conditioning and trauma, high level of body, nervous system awareness have helped me tremendously. It's funny about the undiagnosed thing. My husband, I was talking to my daughter, maybe it was last year, and my daughter was like, my daughter has dyslexia actually, and she said, yeah, because clearly dad has dyslexia. And I'd never thought of it before, but I thought he definitely has dyslexia, like without a shadow of a doubt. But you're absolutely right that we don't always spot it. And Emma Claire says something here as well. Suspicions came about through, you know, social media information where I see myself in them. Mum is also now questioning. And I think there is that. I know I worked with a friend whose children had were diagnosed with I'm going to say I think ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. But so I've worked with that individual on and off since I think I first met him in my 30s and then worked with him into my 40s. And without a shadow of a doubt, I could have told you before, you know, that he had something, right, whatever it be. And then when he was taking his son through the diagnosis, the person that was diagnosing said to him, you know, have you ever thought about an evaluation? Because it was as clear as anything, but he'd never thought about it, right? It's absolutely fascinating.
This is the other problem. A lot of ADHDs, at least, and some ADHDs, but mostly ADHDs, a lot of blind spots. You know, and that's again where coaching is like, it comes to the fore, because coaching's the mirror. It's a non-judgmental space, and it's the mirror in which someone can gradually gain more awareness without the RSD. This is the problem. The rejection sensitive dysphoria, not only does it stop people from asking for help, including, you know, admitting, oh, this is hard, or this is, you know, so many ADHDs and people ADHD. I'm fine. I like, you know, starting the coaching and you're talking to people, asking them how they are. I'm fine. And you dig a little bit deep against the masking. The masking becomes a habit. And the belief is, I have to be fine. Because, you know, ADHD is people pleasers. You know, we can't not be fine. So a lot of us also, we're very much in our heads, and a lot of us forget our bodies. There's some ADHDs that are very about the body, into exercise. Unfortunately, so annoyed I didn't get that one where I have to like exercise. I wish. Not fair, you know. It's not fair, you know. Like literally, they have to. I'm on holiday with one of my friends who's got the other type that need to move, and we get to the hotel. It's like, I'm going for a run. I'm like, but we're just on holiday. No, let's relax. But you know, they've got no choice. They have to.
It's just, you know, literally, as you said that, you reminded me of my sister-in-law was late diagnosed ADHD. But I remember we went on a retreat, right, which was a yoga retreat. So it was really to like relax and all of that. But as well as yoga, you know, you can go and do fitness classes. She never stopped. Like she just had to go and do everything. I was like, what do you do? Just like relax for 2 seconds, you know. But she was like literally everything. She had to do everything.
You can't stop. Us ADHD is, we don't do rest like neurotypicals. We can't. Because you know, we're hot. Our brain's hot wired for interest. It's hot wired. You know, where our brains are always craving stimulation. The problem is, if we can't get positive stimulation, the brain will automatically go to negative emotion, because nothing fills the brain so quickly, you know, and so kind of satisfyingly the negative emotion. And I'm not a neuroscientist whatsoever, but I learned ADCAR, the amygdala, the connection. Once you go negative, apparently, each time it gets stronger and stronger, it becomes automatic. And that's why ADHD is known for ruminating, and we have a negativity bias.
So Adrian's put a question in here around is DHD, etc., crippling or challenging when the expectation, whether that's internally, personally, or externally, is to behave neurotypically?
I've never, you know, since I've been doing this since 2018, I've never received this question. And actually, you know, this person's very insightful, spot on, because the main issue with the neurodiversity is a mismatch in expectations. It's having the person themselves, because they're looking through the, you know, neurotypical lens, the expectations they're going to have of themselves are neurotypical. And so obviously they're not going to be able to adjust. They're not going to be able to, you know, adjust other people's expectations either. And they're going to keep shooting all over themselves, and they're going to keep failing. And then they're going to keep reinforcing that story, right? That, you know, they're hopeless, or there's no, you know, I'll never be able to do this. I'm a failure. And it's like this RSD cycle that just, this is why mental health, you know, effects of untreated ADHD and autism are huge, because of this type of thing. It's all about expectations. And this is why with coaching and training, the importance of looking through the right lens. When you go to do something, in terms of SMART goals, we always test our achievability, the A in SMART, through, well, hang on, let's look at that goal. But so what do you know about your ADHD and how that might be difficult? If they're like, if they're like, I'm going to be able to do this and this, or do this at this time every single day. And because the only consistent thing about us is we're inconsistent. So being unachievable, that consistency.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, the one label, Sylvia puts a comment in here about labels, which I'll come back to. Not a big fan of labels, which I totally get. I mean, labels are for cans of food, right? Not for people, is the general general saying that I love. I'm waiting for neurotypical to be binned. I'm waiting for, because as I was saying to you, I believe that when it comes to neurodivergence and neurotypical, the normal distribution is going to be proven to be very wrong, right? I just don't think it's right. And so I think that view of what is neurotypical being like, say, I don't know whether it's 80% or 88% or whatever it might be. I just got a sense that it's not right, that the normal distribution is flatter, right? So that the spread is wider.
What's normal? I do have something on this though, in terms of labels. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately, and I agree, it's not good to label, pigeonhole anyone. I mean, even with ADHD, obviously no two ADHDs are the same. And you're not your ADHD, you're not your autism. Obviously, there's so much more to each of us than that. However, it has a massive impact. And if we don't give that significance, and if we don't adjust expectations and be more compassionate to ourselves because of our neurodiversity, this will lead to massive issues. I mean, for me personally, and for a lot of clients, the thing is, like with ADHD, for instance, you can't get the medication unless you've got the diagnosis. And the medication can be this is the thing, a lot of people don't understand. The medication doesn't just improve focus. It doesn't just help you work better and get your work done, help you study, a lot of the young people in school and stuff. It is so much more than that. For a lot of people, ADHD is, we're vulnerable to domestic abuse, abusive relationships. We are very vulnerable. And, weak working memory. We have, we're very susceptible to gaslighting. We can't find our corner quite often, particularly if we're overwhelmed. And so, we can be the targets because we're people pleasers. We put others before our own needs. We are a target. And the medication can help you fight your corner. The medication can help you stand up for yourself, right? And be able to free yourself from, an unhealthy situation that you've normalized. Because again, remember what I was saying earlier about ADHD's coping mechanism is, I'm fine. Everything's fine. And then because of our weak working memory, literally, we could be in like a terrible, terrible situation, something abusive. We get, we do our work, we get stuck in our work, we're back in. That's gone, outside, out of mind, until the next time. But then we do it again, forget again. So you get stuck. We get stuck in this cycle. We normalize everything. So the medication can literally save your life.
Yeah. And so there is potentially that usefulness or use of the labels. And I get, maybe everybody's different, right? So for some people, maybe the labels aren't the thing that works for them, but actually, for others, it serves a purpose, right?
Yeah. Look, I would say, from what I've seen, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice because it's not just those kind of risks, but you're basically with ADHD, with autism, self-worth's really low, because if you're not looking through the lens of your neurodiversity and setting achievable expectations and goals, then you're going to really not like yourself very much. And the negative self-talk that people come to us with in coaching when they haven't understood what's going on and being able to reframing things, not I'm lazy, uncaring, person that no one can rely on. I never follow through, so I'm, useless. No, you got ADHD, you got a weak working memory. You do care, right? You do want to show up. When when someone's there to, hold your focus, you're doing 100%, 150%, So it's so important to be able to distinguish between what you would traditionally characterize as a character flaw, versus an ADHD trait.
Yeah.
You better separate that, make that distinction. It's important, and deserve that at least,
Yeah.
No more
I hear
suffering. Stop
you.
suffering, please.
Definitely. I hear you. I wanted to come to, there's a couple of comments. There's a couple of points in the comments around like education and raising awareness. So Mick has talked here about understanding neurodivergence and potentially, getting managers, for example, just to this like basic level of neurodivergence. Junior also says, so Junior is also an exec coach within NatWest. So Junior works internally as an exec coach. And he said, I'm thinking of adding neurodiversity to my coaching practice. Can you recommend any credible certification? So something about, resources around training, and people maybe that want to go further than just those basic levels as well. Just it'd be good to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I trained with ADCA, the ADD Coaching Academy. So there were only 2 ADHD coaching training providers, and it's not just ADHD; they're also expanding to ADHD. I've seen they're now also offering coaching training for ADHD coaching. But they've been around, like David Gawork, he's the godfather of, HD coaching. He's been doing this for 30 years. It's all based on the neuroscience. It's all evidence-based. So ADCA, that's ADDCA. And actually, he opens our HD Coaching Summit every year. And we've actually got recordings. If you'd like, I can share. I'll comment onto this thread.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
You can hear David Gawork speak. I'm like a blushing schoolgirl, literally. Last year, it was embarrassing. I was watching myself back. You would have thought I had a crush on him, the way I was like, because he hold on to his every word. Like he's like the godfather of coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, perfect. There was somebody's comments here that I wanted to come to, Dee Dee, because I thought your comment here is, I guess it talked about relationships and the impact, right, in terms of interpersonal relationships. So Dee Dee, my husband's behaviours had a massive impact on our marriage, and it was clear to me that he was neurodivergent. Once diagnosed, he was able to understand and not feel guilty about his ADHD behavior. His brother was also found to have ADHD as he then had the test. So again, I guess that talks to a couple of things really, but the usefulness sometimes of having that diagnosis.
Massively.
And then also the impact on just that it can make things like interpersonal and I guess working relationships as well a lot easier, right? Because people understand so much better.
Well, honestly, so I coach couples, and it is which is interesting, challenging but interesting, and so rewarding. But the thing is, so we have a tendency to, obviously, we look through our lens and we interpret other people's behavior through our own lens. And the neurodiverse, particularly the road mapping types, do that they can't help themselves. They'll assume, they'll try and build the picture. And quite often they get the picture wrong. And that's where the conflicts, there's a misunderstanding. And so being able to understand neurodiversity, be able to understand your own neurodiversity, because you can't kind of communicate that and help someone look through that lens and interpret your behavior in the correct way if you don't get it yourself. So that's fundamental, is understanding your own neurodiversity. So it's all about expectation. Again, see the expectation mismatch. That's where the conflict comes. Yeah. Because if you're kind of if your expectations are through a neurotypical lens, well, hey, I asked you to take the rubbish out. Like, do you see I'm I'm working all day, I come home, the children, you only had to do this one thing. Why haven't you done it? Right? And quite often there are some ADHDers, gosh, I mean, I'm sure with some of the viewers here, if they've got kids with ADHD and autism, maybe both, their rooms, and it's a real thing for them. This is the other thing. We really emphasize wants versus, again, why it's so important to have the label, because there's shame. I've got a good friend who, it can be quite traumatic growing up, being a young one, not knowing you've got ADHD, your parents don't know. And so, their expectations are of a neurotypical child. But poor neurodiverse child, they can't meet the expectations. So you can imagine they grow up like this poor girl. She was suicidal from age 13 to 17. And she was masking. She didn't tell anyone what she was going through. But she was describing how when her mom used to, come back in and like, why haven't you cleaned it? She described it the way she described it. And this is the beauty of coaching as well. And how in terms of nothing beats, in terms of education on neurodiversity, coaching people with neurodiverse, there's nothing like it, because you're literally their words, their experiences, and for her, she couldn't move. She said, I wanted to so bad and I felt so ashamed. I could not get my body to move. I could not. It was like, stepping on razors to do it. And she was so anxious and stressed out, but at the same time felt so ashamed that she was letting her mother down.
Wow. There is such a vast, we're just scratching the surface. I'm gonna encourage everybody to really look into that. It's interesting, even when Sylvia and Anna was talking about the labels, it reminded me of there was that Netflix series. I want to say, was it Geek Girl? If you saw that, it was on I want to say like a year or two ago. It was called Geek Girl, a British Netflix series, and it takes you a while actually to realize that she has ASD, but and they talk about the labels and the diagnosis, and the dad makes a point of saying we didn't want her to have that label, and I don't even think it's ever explicitly said, but it's really obvious. Like they leave a lot of clues for anybody that knows. But I thought it's so interesting how they handled it. It's called Geek Girl. So if you want something to binge on Netflix this weekend, Sylvia said here, do you think there is a link between neurodiversity and eating disorders? Interesting question.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. There really is, particularly, again, mostly. So with ADHD, like before I didn't have an eating disorder, but definitely in terms of bad eating, looking for carbs, looking for dopamine hits before I was medicated. Yeah. My friends were eating salads. I was looking for burgers and chocolate and, just to get this irritable feeling of something. I was always looking for something before I was medicated. It was really, it's very hard to describe, but I was missing something and that made me anxious and it made me irritated. So I was always kind of looking for something. And I found, obviously, if I went into my work or something that really captured my interest, then that's the only time it would go away. And if I didn't have that, I needed dopamine, so I'd look for food. But from what I've with the autistic people, with people with autism, there is a huge link, and it's got to do with the control, or something to do with, well, I can control this. I mean, I'm not an expert on this side of things. We work with an expert. So on our website, we do have someone that specializes in neurodiversity and eating disorders. Unfortunately, this is it's very common. Young people, not just women, not just young girls, boys as well. Perfectionism because of the RSD. Remember? Sensitivity.
Explain RSD, and I know you explained what the abbreviation stood, but just explain what RSD is for people that maybe are listening, and how it shows up.
Okay, so Dr. William Dodson in the US, he said that like 90% of people with ADHD have it. But I have to say, every single person I've coached has got it. And I found that people with ADHD and autism more so. RSD, so dysphoria comes from the Greek word. It means crippling pain. So rejection, actual or perceived. So it's quite often not actual rejection that triggers our RSD. It's perceived, So say something goes wrong, we will automatically kind of blame ourselves, like, oh God, that project, oh God, it was me. I mustn't have put such a, I must have missed that. Blaming yourself, but also, in the workplace, any feedback, any constructive feedback, reviews, not so constructive, because you could have pleased 99 out of 100 clients that are raving about you. They've been transformed. Only takes one. Because one of the, I would call ADHD a deficit of perspective, really, in a way, although it's a deficit of momentum, and perspective, I'd say. But we just don't have any perspective. So something like that hits us like a ton of bricks, and it's as if it's like the whole world falls in, and it would be enough, literally, for an ADHDer to be thinking of, oh, I'm crap at this, I should just give up, I should just quit now, even though it's just this one person, right? It's really not even a valid, comment. This person may have just been, maybe they had RSD and something happened, or, but it doesn't matter. I didn't help someone, even though the 99 people were transformed and loved me, and it's amazing. It only takes one.
Yeah. I mean, as you were talking there, I was thinking about, feedback and what managers can do and all of that. But so let's get onto that bit, actually. What managers, what line managers and organizations should be doing, first of all, in terms of the, just in terms of managing, right, and kind of helping individuals that do have neurodivergence to sort of like navigate the workplace more confidently and really sort of like unleash their full potential, and then also spotting the signs of potential burnout and helping like their teams cope with that. Just talk to us about what it is that managers and organizations should be doing more.
Okay. So definitely understanding, learning about ADHD and autism and how it manifests in the workplace. So, like we, for instance, Ascend ADHD, we provide ADHD and neurodiversity training for managers in particular. The other thing that's really helpful that we've done, when the relationship between manager and employee breaks down, it can be salvaged. So we've done this a few times. It's called co-coaching. And so we coach both, the manager and the employee, probably over even 3-4 sessions to work out what's kind of going on from the employee's perspective. And again, like I was saying earlier, like any relationship, like you pointed out, it's the same thing. There's a mismatch in expectations. Again, why it's so important. The label is so important, because otherwise you're not going to adjust your expectations, You're going to keep on misunderstanding, and the misunderstandings lead to distrust. And with ADHDs in particular, they say, it's a book by Barry Fizont, and he talks about autism being a disability of trust. And that, when I read that for me, that is the definition of disability of trust of the body, the world, and other people and themselves. Can't trust themselves, can't trust anyone else. So definitely this affects in the workplace. If the employee's got ADHD, it is so important, right? That the employee can trust that manager. And how can you trust someone that actually doesn't understand you and keeps wanting you to do things that you can't do, and then puts you in performance management sometimes? And and I see it all the time. It's crucial. They need to understand and look through the lens and learn how to communicate safely around. Because words are very powerful.
Well, the whole feedback thing, it's interesting. I mean, even Junior sort of said it really resonates. I hate feedback. I mean, I think it was when I was watching like Oprah Winfrey's, like when she was like doing a program about recording her last show, like the last Oprah Winfrey show. And she was saying, in our organization, we've got a saying, which is feedback is your friend, right? Which is great for some people, but it maybe doesn't work for everyone. So, because Emma Claire has put here, the only appraisals I remember are the ones where my boss heavily criticized me, both times on the edge of quitting, right?
No.
And what does it look like when feedback is done well for people that have neurodivergence? What does that look like? What should managers be doing differently around giving feedback and performance reviews to kind of just get that right balance?
Again, taking a coaching approach is like learning how to coach. It was personally a revelation for me as well. I was a governor for SEN. I've got a legal background. I was a lawyer and then a governor. And there were some things in the school, obviously, that I didn't agree with, that, we had to pick up our game when it came to supporting SEN. And I went in there with my legal hat on, my lawyer, telling, advise, this needs to change, And obviously everyone felt criticized and no one was supporting my, my initiatives. And so another governor took me aside and said, look, you gotta come a little bit more. If you want something to change, we'll take a different approach. And so I was learning to coach at the time. And I started, I'm going to put my coaching hat on, take my lawyer hat off, and I'm going to be curious.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ADHD is, like I said, and this is the coaching approach, right? The ADHD, the client's the expert in their own life. They know. My God, do they know? If they've done something wrong, oh my God, that will just be playing. That is like, that's for some ADHDs, unfortunately, when they do something wrong, it's like a movie gets stuck in their head, like the situation that they're not sure of or they were anxious about. It plays on, it just keeps playing and playing. So gently, right? If you just stay curious, they're gonna volunteer it if they feel safe enough. But you can imagine if that's playing and a manager comes in, you blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
They're gonna go on the defense.
Yeah. I love what you said there actually about the coaching approach as like a framework. I was with a group of directors yesterday, so like with an exec team. And actually, as an organization, they have decided that almost like their whole model of like rolling out, culture change and is through a coaching model. So,
oh wow,
they're really sort of like embedding it. And when I sort of first heard it, I thought that's interesting. And but being with them yesterday as a group, I was like,
that is beautiful. That is,
it
has to be. I say because we train schools as well, and the problem with teachers, right? They can't get their messages across because they're not getting curious to find out what's going on for that child, or how they learn best, or what's getting in the way. And so we have this. We say teachers coach first, then teach. Right? Because there's no point. Otherwise.
Exactly. What about, this is an interesting question, this one here. This is going to be our final question, and then we're going to finish off with one thing that organizations can do. So managers themselves can, of course, or also have neurodivergent traits, as well as managing people with neurodivergent traits. Does this add complexity?
Oh, does this add complexity? It really does. Like, I've coached all combinations of this, but I'd say the most challenging one. So you're having an ADHD, ADHD manager with an ADHD employee. The ADHD, now I'm kind of full in this camp because I've got a team of coaches, and I'm full on ADHD. I don't have autism as well. I might have some traits. But I'm pretty straight-laced ADHD. So I'm quite impulsive. I'm very now versus not now. I don't look around the corners. I don't roadmap. I don't need to, check every detail and like make sure everything's, I leap, I'm more of the entrepreneurial type. My team, most of them are all ADHD. So they need they need clarity. They need to see the roadmap. They need notice before things change. And so you can imagine in a workplace, ADHD manager, this is what we're doing. Okay, now I've changed my mind. Now this is what we're doing. What are we doing? And then the ADHD is an absolute, like, so anxious and so frustrated. So you've got that combination. Interesting. And then you've got the other combination where you have like, the ADHD employee, someone that's very ADHD, and that doesn't like the ADHD employee, taking risks, having ideas that just do the thing and get the thing right. Why are there so many mistakes? And there's a bit of that as well.
It's a really interesting question because it's probably actually quite common, especially in, for example, businesses. We know the crossover between entrepreneurs in particular. So if it's a founder-led business, actually, there's quite a high chance that you have got a founder that's neurodivergent for sure.
It needs coaching, so that the teams are always and actually we're our entrepreneurs community. We're launching an Ascend entrepreneurs community starting Monday. So
amazing. If you could do that, would be fantastic. One thing, let's leave the people with one thing that organizations could do, or maybe one thing that they can do just to maybe raise their own levels of awareness around neurodiversity and the challenges in the workplace, including things like burnout. What are your thoughts? One thing that you want to leave the people with?
Yeah, again, to get educated, but make sure it's the right education. So again, we've got some fantastic, the ADHD coaching summits we do, the recordings on Empower ADHD, Send ADHD. But also one thing that would be helpful immediately, again, ADHD coaching is transformational. Managers are busy. We get that, because we trained an organization yesterday. it was not all organizations are created equal in terms of their willingness to really try and bake in the support that's needed and the understanding. But it's about being curious. It's about valuing the neurodiverse, and actually, when you get this right, you'll bring huge competitive advantages to your organization. Like, right bums on the right seats. It's an ADHDer that maybe makes mistakes and can't stand spreadsheets. Like, redesign the role. Don't get them to put them in their area of strength. If you get your neurodiverse in their area of unique brilliance, and you do that with all of your neurodiverse, your organization is going to the ROI, and that's kind of the approach we take, and we see this. But what I see, what needs to stop is these ADHDs in performance management. They're the most dedicated, and before they were in performance management, they were the highest kind of yielding in terms of contributions and revenue. But usually they then get promoted to manager. Without support, it's a whole new ball game. And without support, they kind of fail. And it's really sad to see, because they're so loyal and so dedicated and so talented. So it's about take a coaching approach, get to understand, what you're dealing with, what your strengths are, and leverage them. So employers can take the benefit of access to work funding. I don't know if you've heard of access to work funding. Have you heard of that?
Haven't really connected it with sort of like neurodiversity though. So it's really interesting to mention it.
For years, access to work. You can get access to work funding for coaching, for ADHD coaching, also for ADHD awareness training for your organization. Because so we run again. I think the 26th of March next week, we run every month an access to work application session where ADHDers that want to apply, they join the session and they don't leave. They don't leave until they press the submit button, and that's so interesting watching ADHDers and people with autism answering the questions, because quite often I'm like, that's fine. I promise you, we're moving on now. We're moving on now, because left to their own devices, they'll take the whole day to do it, or they just won't do it at all. So I would strongly recommend. It's on our Empower ADHD website. It's on every month. If you've got employees with ADHD, if you've got ADHD and want support, come and join us, and I'll help you get some funding.
What's your website called, Stephanie?
So we've got www.empower-adhd.com. So Empower ADHD, and we've got Ascend is our corporate one, but for the access to work coaching, Empower, and then Ascend, www.ascend-adhd.com for workplace training and entrepreneurs. So I'll send the link. We're excited.
Drop the link in, and obviously, people can find you. Where's the best place to connect to you? Is it on here, on LinkedIn, or on Instagram, or
LinkedIn? I look at. I'm best on email, Stephanie at empower-adhd.com. But you can message me on LinkedIn as well. I will probably ask for you to email me. But it's definitely would love to help. And Cheryl, sorry, about
it adds to the excitement, right?
Well, you can understand, the ADHD traits. We're time blind, so we can't manage time very well. In terms of things that lead to burnout, we take way too much on our plates. So managers, in terms of helping, your employees not burn out, your ADHD will say yes to everything. Remember, we're people pleasers, ASD. Add the time blindness to that, we think we can do everything. We've got time. Like, watch that, because they got no idea. And so they really don't. They don't plan. So there's nothing to actually say, no, I don't have time. So it's one of the things we do in coaching. We get them to do the plan so that when they are asked, actually. And
you know what I loved about the fact that almost like the one of the big takeaways from this session has been around coaching and the power of coaching. And the reality is, in the same way that a lot of the adjustments that are made, or adjustments generally to make the workplace better for people that are neurodivergent, it helps everybody. A coaching approach helps everybody anyway. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
it is the best. It is the best. I remember being so scared, because as a lawyer, you're meant to you're meant to know everything. Otherwise, obviously, what's your value if you don't know? But coaching is all about, you're not meant to know.
Yeah.
You go that scared there. I thought, what? Hang on. But then you get into it, you see the outcomes and the effects for yourself, and then you never go back, because it really is the most effective approach. And it's, it's respectful, it's person-centered, it's non-judgmental, it's beautiful, honestly. Yeah.
Perfect. Stephanie, thank you so much. I know you have a lot on your plate this morning. Thank you so much to everybody in the comments. I know you thought you were going to just have me this morning, like just ranting at you, but obviously we're really fortunate to have Stephanie. But thank you, everybody, honestly, that's been with us from the start to the end. I've really appreciated it. And if you're watching us on the replay, thank you for taking an hour and 5 minutes out of your day to check out this conversation. Next week, I'm talking with Sarah Stein-Lebrun about talking about politics in the workplace. So that is going to be a juicy conversation. So but have an amazing weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks.